The goddess knows I can't have a child, gives me the second child. Now we're left at the end thinking, I'm not sure that's how that works.
No, you should probably hand over both babies. But
That's
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit.
okay,
You would
Steve,
be.
we were discussing the other day. It's about time we did another Indian movie. And so we have chosen a film that has just dropped on Amazon Prime Video here in Hong Kong. And that is Karan Tejpal's Stolen.
Yeah, James, I was looking forward to, as you said, doing an Indian film. I don't think we've done one in a while, even though we've talked about it. And I'm so glad you chose this one because it's about a stolen baby, obviously. And so much happens right at the beginning that you're not aware of what's occurring. I found myself rewinding and watching the beginning again to see the baby stolen. And I'm thinking, I want to make sure I got all this in my head correctly because this is a wonderful journey of two brothers who get thrown into, they're going to a wedding. You know, who thinks I'm going to a wedding? And then I have to help a mother find and retrieve her stolen baby through just challenge after challenge. By the end of this, these two brothers have endured so much. For me, it was like a non-traditional, and not that I'm an expert in Indian film, but it was a non-traditional film, at least in the ones that I've seen. Nobody broke into dance. There was no lightheartedness. Even the movies, the Indian films I really enjoy, like RRR, that has some gripping moments, also have these moments of lightheartedness and dance and just love for life. This is a really hard movie from beginning to end.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see more of these films that are, as a shorthand, let's say, almost designed for an international audience. That are
Okay, yeah,
moving
yeah,
away from the model of the what are called like masala movies. You know, you call it like a popcorn movie, the
yeah,
mainstream sort of big budget 3 hour musicals
yeah.
that touch on every different kind of genre, and it's a roller coaster with massive production values. These tend to be obviously be smaller indie independent productions, but definitely, I mean, I haven't been paying too much attention. I'll get that out of the way. But definitely, I have encountered in the last sort of decade, last 20 years, maybe, more of these kinds of Indian movies popping up sort of on the festival circuit, particularly. And I think that that's in a way what they're aiming for. They're like, okay, these aren't the kind of mainstream movies that a big Indian audience might respond to in the same way, because it does feel very different in the way that the film is presented, more than anything, well, the way that the story is told. But internationally, this will slide into sort of an Asian film program alongside movies from China or from the Philippines or Indonesia or whatever, just as sort of an indie art house Southeast Asian cinema, and won't look out of place. There won't be this one big glossy 3 hour musical, and it feels like that is something that is happening more and more and more, and this definitely falls into sort of that kind of model. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I liked how lean it was. I liked how focused it was. It's pretty much a small number of characters that we're following. And in doing so, it feels, definitely the themes are incredibly Indian and incredibly, culturally specific about the class divides and the other things we'll get on onto later.
Yeah.
But it felt very international, or even dare I say Western, in the way it told its story, in the way that you follow the characters, in the way that events unfolded. It almost felt like a horror movie or a
Yeah.
survival thriller or
Yeah.
something like that. It's the two rich brothers who find themselves, in the middle of nowhere. It's the classic is something like, I don't know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something almost. I found that as the stakes were escalating, I was like, oh, okay, as a Western audience member, I felt very comfortable in the setup, if you like. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I get the type of story that we're talking about.
Well, like you said, it's so tight and so minimalist in such a way that, I mean, the budget couldn't have been that high in this movie. But what you get out of that is I felt like at the beginning when they're standing around with the cops and the two brothers and they're trying to figure out this confusion and this chaos, and you got this screaming mother and everybody's trying to figure out how do we put these puzzle pieces together. You feel like you're there with them. Like the way the cinematography is set up with the lights. It makes me feel like when I'm out at night hanging around a car with the headlights on and we're just standing around talking or figuring something out. I had this tremendous feeling of being in the action alongside of the brothers, a part of the conversation. And so really wanted to give a nod to the director and to the cinematographer for creating this environment that drew me in as the viewer into this scenario personally.
Yeah, it's very tense. It's very intimate. It's a lot of
Yes.
handheld cameras, and you are right there with them. At times,
Hmm.
the camera is sort of in the car with them and what have you, or follows them even from inside the car to outside the
Hmm.
car. There were a couple of sequences where I was like, oh, is this an unbroken take
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
I think that there's a sequence when they leave the station for the first time, and then they end up getting in the car and following the cops with the woman in the back seat. And I think that's all done in one sort of unbroken take, and it
Yeah.
and it
That's
really
good.
adds it really adds to sort of the intimacy and the immediacy of it. I mean, it's written and directed by Karan Tejpal, and as far as I'm aware, this is his first feature film.
Okay.
But he has worked before. I saw that his only other like notable credit, as far as I can see, is he was an assistant director on a movie called Three Idiots, which
Oh, I've saw Three Idiots.
yeah,
Yeah.
so did
Yeah.
I.
Yeah.
And I mean that came out like 15 years ago. Yeah, that's a big budget, hugely successful movie with Amir Khan in it. About three best friends. And I think
Yeah.
they invent something, don't they? And they become very rich, and then it all
Right.
falls apart. Something like that. And that was a huge hit. I think that's one of those Indian movies that pops up on the IMDb top 100 or something like that. So I was like, oh, okay. So he came out of the system. That was, as far as I'm aware, for all intents and purposes, Three Idiots looks to me like a very big mainstream kind of
Right.
Bollywood movie. Um, and he sort of cut his teeth there. And then I don't know what he's been doing for the last 15 years. Maybe he's been doing TV, or maybe he's not been working in the industry. I don't know, but there does seem to be a big gap, and now this is his only other credit. And it's always sort of, I think, encouraging to see filmmakers sort of move away from the mainstream with that knowledge and be like, okay, yeah, well, this is what I really want to do. I want to make these smaller, more intimate, more socially conscious stories, for which clearly there isn't as much money because it's perceived that there probably won't be as bigger audience, and so you
Hmm.
have to work on a different scale. But you get to tell the stories that you want to tell, and I think we need to get into the meat of it. The central theme of this is sort of the mob mentality, mob violence, and
Yeah.
how social media, particularly, not solely, but particularly in countries like India, has been documented as, being able to very quickly sort of whip up this kind of uncontrollable, sort of violent mass response
Yeah.
to situations in a manner that is very, very difficult to contain and to control. And that's
Oh,
really at the heart of the story.
that's what hit me. There's that mob scene when they're beating the brother to, if the police hadn't showed up, they'd have beaten him to death. And it just really reinforced in me again, bringing in the geopolitics that are happening in the world today, how much we take for granted the rule of law. Like to have a court system that is impassionate, that is going to not be given to these emotional outbursts of vigilante justice, but will hear both sides. Nobody wants to hear in a mob. And I find the mob scary
Mm.
because you just never know what's going to rile people up into a frenzy of which reason is thrown out the window. And so, and the way this is done so well in this film is there's not just him getting beaten up a little bit. It is really drawn out in a way that you're thinking, are they going to kill him? Are they going to kill
Mm.
him? Are they going to beat him to death? This poor guy's just thought he's going to a wedding, and now he's being beaten to death by a village that thinks he's stolen a baby, but he hasn't stolen a baby. He's actually trying to find the stolen baby. It's like the injustice of that as the viewer just has these emotions rising up in me. Like, you idiots, you can't kill this guy. He's the one that's trying to save a baby.
And I think you're absolutely right when you say you can't reason with these mobs, because I find that when you watch watch scenes like this, you can't help but put yourself into that situation and be
Absolutely.
like, how would I try and talk back against it's three people, then it's 10 people, then it's 20 people, and they've all made their minds up already. They don't know
Hmm.
me from Adam, but they saw one clip of something on Twitter or whatever, and that's enough for them
Yeah.
to literally it's I'm tried and found guilty, and
Yeah.
and
And often it's really touching on a nerve ending in society
sure.
because there's so much injustice in the world. And I think in this particular society, these villagers probably experience a lot of injustice. And so that scapegoat mechanism really comes into as soon as they can put all of that anxiety and frustration and
Hmm.
anger and fear and direct it at one person, we can just all feel good, banishing, killing, throwing out whether it's the Virgin in the volcano or the Jew in Nazi Germany, we can expel
Mm.
our corporate anxiety and hate. And so you're watching this sociological thing happening before your eyes. And yeah, it was a powerful moment. This, like you said, this film is actually quite small, quite intimate, and yet extremely powerful at times in a way that you couldn't even be able to replicate in a much larger, bigger budget film.
Yeah, and I think it challenges its audience in so many different ways, not least because the main character, the older brother, yeah, who is the subject of all that? What's his name? Gautam,
Mhm.
is such a dick to begin with. In
Yes.
the opening sort of act of the movie, it's just like I hate this guy. He's screwing everything up. It's just like shut up. All he wants to do is get his brother out and get to this wedding, and he wants to throw money at any problem. And he's very dismissive. I mean, the caste system becomes immediately apparent that he at least perceives himself to be superior to everybody else here, including his own brother,
Yes.
and won't hear a word other
Yeah.
to the contrary.
Yeah.
He immediately zeroes in on the cop and he's like, "Hey, come on, let's sort this out. Let's sort this out." And the
Yeah.
cop is like, "Don't touch me." And then it's by the end, he's the one who has been at the center of all of this mob violence and what have you, and he's the one that's been sort of beaten to death. I think it's very careful. The director has to be very careful in this situation that what he doesn't do is say, oh no, poor, rich, sophisticated, upper class, higher
Yeah.
caste people thrown into the lion's den that is what we all fear, that is once you go off the main road, once you veer into
Yeah. Yeah.
rural territory where all of these horribly uneducated, dirty, poor people
Yeah.
are, you will find nothing but hostility and ignorance and violence. At some moments, I was kind of a little bit worried that the film was going to basically take this tack that you've got to listen to the educated people, you've got to sympathize with the educated people. Everything else is sort of is chaotic and
Yeah.
lawless. But I think that what saves it from that message is the young mother in question, Jumpa, played by Mia Melzer, whose story is complicated and
And it
who's
gets more complicated as
yeah.
it goes on because this is not a cut and dried case of just a stolen baby. And to me, that's another thing that made this film a couple stars higher. It wasn't just stolen baby.
Mm,
Things become revealed, and we're a spoiler show, but obviously she did an illegal surrogacy. So then we're left to think, oh, is this really her baby, or is this just the case of somebody who made a deal and now she's reneging on the deal?
mm,
But then it gets more complicated than that. There was actually twins, and in her mind, she's justified it that I made a contract for one baby.
for one
They
baby.
got their one baby. I can't, the goddess knows I can't have a child, gives me the second child. Now we're left at the end thinking, I'm not sure that's how that works.
No, you should probably hand over both babies. But
That's probably the real deal here, and that's what makes this film so beautifully complicated. Is life is complicated and twisted, and it's never as straightforward as we would love to be able to say. Oh, this is just a mother who's had her baby stolen. It's a bad thing, and these two guys who go on this journey from selfishness to selflessness, and then we can just tie a little bow at the end and that was nice. But no, we're left with a really complicated issue at the end, which is not fully resolved.
no, and I think, and that's where it sort of ended positively for me because I mean, while I was appreciating the craft and the execution of it all, I was sort of slightly flip flopping on on just the stance that it was taking on all of
Yeah.
these events. And I was kind of like, oh, please don't end on the note that, the brothers know best kind of thing, and
Yeah. Yeah.
because that would really resonate very badly for me, because it would feel very, very sort of snobbish and judgmental, whatever. And yeah, as I said, I think that the mother saves it because her situation is so complicated, because of how she is a pawn in all of this. She was the inciting factor, but then she becomes so passive, or just unable to become the what about is that she's not able to control her own
Yeah.
fate, her own destiny. She is at the mercy of all of these other characters who have all of their own best interests at heart, and only at the end, by everything being so complicated, but you can't help but reason with her finally. That yeah. Anyway, as is quite obvious here, it's a very complicated situation that is left beautifully unresolved, because I think any pat happy ending would have just felt sort of cheap and
Yeah.
and a bit sort of a cop out, really. And so I'm glad that it ends the way that it does.
James, I just want to address the acting. I thought the acting in this was superb. That's the one of the things that I took away, and a little mental note was make sure you note how good the performances were in this film. Because starting with Jumpa, when her baby is stolen, the grief, the primal grief that she expresses in that moment. And then there's just where she's screaming, and then the brothers get in it, and then the cops are going on to it. And I'm thinking in the script, is there actual lines? Are they improving? Because they're all on top of one another. It doesn't feel like a film that I'm watching. Again, I feel like I'm in this intimate setting where something really bad has just happened and chaos is exuding. It's this, and this person's jumping on this one, and this one's jumping on this line and this line. And I'm thinking this was directed so well and acted so well. And coming back to Jumpa, I think you and I have been in Asia long enough that we've been in villages that has that 4'9" woman in there that's like 55 years old. And even though she's like 4'9", she could beat the shit out of you and could probably carry a half a ton of water barefoot through a field. They're just made of iron and determination and steel. And this actress, I don't know her name, but she exudes that quality that I'm familiar with. Like, I have no doubt. I mean, in the end, maybe she's a little confused about whether this is her baby or not. But in her mind, this is her baby.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing, heaven and earth will be moved before I let somebody have my baby. And she expresses that wonderfully.
Absolutely, yeah. She's got that kind of resilience, that she is able to, or has been forced to face everything that life can throw at you. And
she's still standing, and she's still standing,
and she's still there. You look at how sort of easily these men, but let's call them boys really, because they've been so pampered for their entire upbringing, how quickly they are just like beaten to a pulp, really, just by life, and yes, by an angry mob, but but by circumstances they no longer control. Whereas Jumper has lived in a world where she has no agency whatsoever,
Right.
And yet she's still going strong, and she will do whatever it takes, really. Even when she knows that everybody is against her and nobody has her interests at heart, and everybody really just wants to scapegoat her and get everything done and go home. They're not really interested in the truth or injustice. They just want a quick fix, and they want to get it solved. And if they can make a buck on the side on the way, even better. So yeah, no, I agree. She's absolutely fantastic, and is sort of the best performance in it. And I did appreciate Abhishek Banerjee, who plays the main guy, Gautam, the older brother, just because he does such a good job of being such a dick at the beginning, but by the end you are sort of feeling sorry for him, if only because he is he's on death's door pretty much. I have seen him in something else, actually. I saw him in another indie movie like this at a festival about 10 years ago called Aji, where he's very much the villain in a kind of rape and murder case. I think it's murder. It's definitely a rape case. And he's the spoilt son of a local politician. And we
Right.
know very much early on that he did it. And he's just horrible. And,
Yeah.
he, again, greases all the wheels to ensure that, and the cops aren't even interested in him. They zero
Right.
in on the victim and the victim's family and all that kind of stuff. And that was a really good, very shocking, very, very daring, actually, little indie. And so he's clearly working in that indie sphere, and that's good to see that there are resources in terms of actors and what have you, willing
Yeah.
not to chase a sort of masala movie role, and willing to
Mhm.
support filmmakers like this.
Yeah. So, James, it looks like we both enjoyed this film. What unit of measurement are we going to use to grade Stolen?
It's sort of how should we put it, like sort of unexpected second babies, I don't know.
Surrogated wombs. How many
Gosh.
wombs?
No, I don't want to do that. I mean, it's got to be babies, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, how many babies? Let's go with how many
Yeah.
babies. So, how many stolen babies
No,
would you
not the
give
stolen
Stolen?
babies.
Okay.
Let's do the miracle babies.
Miracle babies. How many miracle babies would you? That's right. There was a miracle. Well,
Well, here,
when?
this is a rare occurrence, I think, where you have actually influenced my opinion on something,
Oh, okay.
because I think I came into this thinking, yeah, it's solid,
Hmm.
and it tackles some issues, and it does so competently, and all the
Hmm.
rest of it. And I was like, yeah, I was going to give it a sort of solid sort of 3, but
Hmm.
talking about it, I'm like, you know what? No, 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 it achieves more than that. Without being heavy-handed, and without cheapening the issues or sensationalizing the issues, or giving any particular demographic an easy out or anything like that. And so, as I don't give halves, I'm now forced to go to 4 miracle babies
Wow, there you
out of
go.
5.
Good,
Yeah,
good. Yeah, I obviously, as I said, I really enjoyed this film. I love the little things, the little social commentary about how even the police initially, like you said, they wanted to just scapegoat the woman, the mother. Let's just pin it all on her. And what makes it interesting, they're not even pinning it on her so that we can get rich, like some kind of corruption where she takes the fall, but we all get, $100,000. It's like her life is so meaningless. She's not worth the paperwork
yeah,
it would take. That's how bad society can be at times. That person's life is not worth the inconvenience I would have to go through if I listened to her. And so the very fact that the writer director is able to put his finger on the pulse of this issue that I think resonates with societies around the world. Corruption is always something linked to injustice that this film deals with. Now I almost feel bad because I gave it a 3.5 on Letterboxd. I'm feeling, well, James can't give it more than I give it, but I'm gonna stick with my guns. I think it's a good 3.5 solid film that I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm looking forward to more films from this writer director because
definitely.
it's good storytelling, it's intimate storytelling, and it's the kind of movie I enjoy reviewing.
Definitely. So we throw it to you. Have you seen Stolen? It's on Prime Video right now, so do check it out. It has had a very healthy festival run. I think it debuted about 18 months ago at Venice 2023, and then has been playing festivals around the world for a year, which is great to see because that doesn't happen often enough with Indian movies. What do you feel about the representation of the issues in Stolen? Do you think it's done them effectively, or do you think it's done them a little bit sensationalist or a bit naively or whatever? Yeah, if you have an opinion on the movie, do let us know. We really appreciate hearing from you. And where do we go from here? It does seem like Tejpal has yet to make another movie. So anything else in this sphere, this type of Indian movie, we're wide open to suggestions.
And you can find James and I on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. We'd love to connect with you.
Definitely.
Till next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.